grab your sunscreen because we're going topless. A lot of the cars we feature here on Muscle Car of the Week are obviously high-performance muscle cars because you can tell they've got stripes, they've got bright styled wheels, they've got bright colors and fancy names. But in this case, we've got a very subtle muscle car. It's a 1965 Plymouth Satellite, and it's a convertible in a nice subtle shade of maroon. And it doesn't really look like anything that could be a terror from the stoplight drags on the street, but when you get closer and you pop the hood, you find that this car is powered by the Chrysler 426 Wedge. So it's got kind of a neat little secret. And behind that is an automatic transmission, which allows this car to cruise effortlessly. Many people equate the 426 cubic inch Chrysler V8 with the 426 Hemi and its hemispherical cylinder heads and high horsepower and torque ratings. And that was a very popular engine because it debuted as a race motor in '64 and consequently won the Daytona 500 in the first, second, third, and fourth place positions. But the 426 Hemi was not the only 426 you could buy, as evidenced by our Satellite. So this is the Commando V8, and in this car it's 426 cubic inches, but it's not a Hemi, it's a wedge head. A little different design, still makes a ton of power. And I always thought it was cool under the hood of these old Mopars because they always painted the inner fenders and the firewall and even the top of the frame rails with the same body color as the outside. A lot of the GM and Fords are just black under there, so it makes the engine look really good. And if you look at the outside of the car, the only place where it says 426 is right here on the hood ornament. It has a very similar bottom end, but a different cylinder head design, a more traditional wedge-shaped combustion chamber, and not the giant hemispherical head that you found on the Hemi. But it was still a very powerful engine. The 426 Wedge made 365 horsepower, 470 foot-pounds of torque. It was 10.3 to 1 compression with a single 4-barrel. And there was a thing called the Max Wedge engine, which was a race version of the Wedge. And of course, drag racing fans knew all about the 65 Plymouths as the street Hemi cars were tearing up super stock. But the Max Wedge and the Street Wedge cars all did very well in drag racing. The mid-60s saw an evolution in car styling. The 50s were known for the big fins, and Chrysler's chief designer, a guy named Virgil Exner, carried that space-age styling into the early 60s with a lot of cars that some buyers thought were maybe just a little bit too eccentric. So Chrysler and Plymouth sales ended up taking a little bit of a slide in the early 60s. So to catch up with GM and Ford, which were going to a much more conservative styling approach, Chrysler came out with this body style, which we see here in the Plymouth Satellite. It does not have any wild fins. The body lines are all very concise. There's a nice smooth line that goes from the front of the car, sloping gently towards the back of the car. The nose is very clean. The grille is nice and tidy. The headlights are pushed all the way out to the corners. The taillights echo the square shapes of the car. You definitely don't have anything too wild on mid-60s Plymouth styling. I think one of the high points of this car, of course, besides the 426 Wedge, is the interior. The design of the interior of this car is very inviting. There's a nice piece of trim that goes the full width of the dash that has a very cool little pattern embossed in it. It's got a good-looking set of gauges, and of course the console with kind of the V-shaped Brightwork trim. This car has a lot of power options, including a power automatic convertible top. That 426 makes a lot of torque, and it's kind of funny to see the 14x7-inch wheels and small tires trying to keep up with it all. But that's part of the fun of driving a cool car like this. So is this a car that you could orbit the Earth in? I know I sure could. Tell us what you think of it on our Facebook page or in the YouTube comments. And don't forget the website at musclecaroftheweek.com. If you go there, we've got a forum now where you can post up pictures of your own cool ragtop if you got one. We'll see you next time on Muscle Car of the Week.